Well, now I'd like to talk about a very profound subject. All major problems, such as poverty, famine, plague, war, pollution, can all be traced back to one root cause: dwindling world resources and an exponentially growing world population. Now, this is nothing new. We've relied so far upon technology and politics to bail us out. And nature does, to a certain extent, tend to repair itself over time. Politics can, to a certain extent, curb human behavior. Science has pulled rabbits out of hats, but that's neither predictable nor sure to continue. Unfortunately, these systems are only capable of postponing the inevitable. Resources are finite. Simple law of physics, entropy. Since it isn't yet possible to move excess population off of the Earth, we're confronted with some harsh choices, whether we choose to make those choices or not. Failing to choose is a choice. And thus far, by and large, we have mostly failed to choose. We can either choose to limit the population of Earth, or we can allow famine, plague, war, pollution, poverty to limit the population for us. And that's what we've been doing for centuries. And it's really harsh and really ugly. I'm going to be attacked here by many saying, "You're a Nazi, you're heartless. How dare you talk about controlling population?" Population is going to be controlled whether we do it voluntarily or not. It's the facts of reality that are harsh, not me. So, not that I give a rat's ass if you think anything of me one way or another. If we do choose to limit population, we've got to decide a few things. So, number one, how many persons do we want on the planet? And how long will the planet sustain that level of population? How much time would that buy us? What standard of living are we going to insist on? What worldwide standard of living is acceptable? Is it enough to have one bowl of rice a day? Or do we want a standard of living where everyone can eat meat? What is the plan of action when inevitably even a limited population has come close to completely exhausting the Earth's resources? What then? What is the plan? How do we prepare for that? I guess it's going to happen whether we prepare for it or not. If we do limit breeding, we obviously have to come up with some criteria as to who we do want to breed and who we want to prevent from breeding. Once we decide that, we have to decide how we're going to enforce those controls on population. Should it be a random lottery? Or should we use some kind of rational criteria, a merit-based system? If it's a merit-based system, we run into a problem described in a novel I read many years ago. Boils down to this, I'm paraphrasing. The person says, if you assembled a Congress of apes and they debated and voted and were tasked with the goal of inventing the next step of evolution, what would they come up with? Well, probably it would look something like an ape with thicker fur, a longer tail, stronger teeth, better claws. It wouldn't look anything like a human being. So we can plan the next step of evolution, but we're going to have to be damn careful how we do it. And another difficulty is planning evolution, even if you do have a perfect template. Breeding programs don't just produce good results, they produce unpredictable results. As anyone that's familiar with hybrid animals is well aware, you can breed in good things, but there are unintended consequences. So that dog, which is very fast and has a wonderful sense of smell, also inherently has brittle bones. It is difficult, if not impossible, to breed out all the negative traits and retain all the good ones. Mutts may not be very talented, but they live longer, and they're healthier, and they're stronger. This is just axiomatic. We know this. And in the field of agriculture is a very good example of the trouble of breeding. So when a farmer sprays pesticide on a field and kills all the insects, or thinks he's killing all the insects, a few insects remain. They survive. These are the ones that are genetically predisposed to be able to resist that particular poison. Now, why is that a big deal? There's only a handful of them. Yes. But that handful breeds. And next year, a huge percentage of the remaining insects are resistant to the poison. So, no big deal. We'll just invent another poison, and another, and another, and another. And eventually, you may end up with superbugs that no poison will kill. And the same trouble can happen if we breed what we consider to be superhumans. What if they have flaws and we need the mutt traits? Well, we do the same thing they did in agriculture. The farmer left 10% of the field unsprayed, no pesticide at all. Why? Because within that 10%, the insects were still vulnerable to that specific poison, and they bred that vulnerability back into the next generation of insects. We can do the same thing with human beings. Whatever criteria we have, we can create colonies, islands, whatever isolated communities we decide. And those societies will be exempt from all of our breeding laws. They will be allowed to do whatever. In the greater society, if you have bad eyesight, you're not allowed to breed because your children will have bad eyesight. But on the island, anybody can have sex, anybody can do whatever. You can keep breeding in bad eyesight because someday there may be a trait we overlooked that is linked to bad eyesight. We don't know. We don't understand genetics all that well. We can't. It's too complicated. So that's a simple solution. What is often, I'm confronted with accusations of being a Nazi. It's rather hilarious because the Nazis weren't incorrect in trying to create a Superman. They just had rotten criteria for it. Unscientific criteria for it. Ridiculous. Just because you're blonde, tall, athletic, and have blue eyes So what? Those are only a couple of traits. It's not a guarantee that you can outrun Jesse Owens, right? And the irony of Jesse Owens winning that foot race in the Olympics is he was the product of breeding. He was the ancestor of slaves who were selected. First in Africa, they outran lions and tigers or whatever. Then they came to America and suffered through all of that selection process as slaves. Only the best, the fastest, the strongest survived. So of course Jesse Owens won that foot race. For the exact reason that Hitler was right. You can breed perfect human beings. You just have to have the right criteria and the correct methods. And I'm not proposing, mass elimination of inferior persons, as the Nazi Party suggested. I think it's wise to control breeding, and this is not a new idea. It goes on right now, and it has gone on for centuries. In India, if a mother has a female child, she kills it herself. She murders the child. Why? Because females are not valuable. They can't work as hard. They don't earn as much money. They're not going to benefit the family. They're a burden. You have to pay a dowry when they get married. So if you're a rural person in India, that's a normal thing to do. And in America, for generations, there were many, many areas of the United States, state laws that practiced the science of eugenics. And the law said, if you're a doctor and you deliver a baby and you see that baby has a birth defect, such as it's missing an arm, it's deaf, it's blind, it's only going to suffer. It's going to be a burden on itself and certainly a burden on its parents. And the doctor was legally allowed to mercy kill that child. This went on for a long time. People don't know this right here in America. So these are not new ideas. These are not horrible ideas. They are inevitable. Either we make these choices or these choices are going to be made for us. And I agree with the writer. It's unlikely we'll make the correct choices. How does an ape plan to create a human being, Homo sapiens or whatever we are? I don't know. But we better fucking get busy learning how. You have to ask, why are we here in the first place? I've been talking about just the basics of survival, but if you step back from survival, I'm not going to ask how did we get here, but what's the point? Are we just here for supernatural reasons? It's a big game being played by the Easter Bunny, Santa Claus, Buddha, Allah, Jehovah. It's just a game. It's a test. Doesn't matter what happens here. It's the afterlife that matters. Well, if you can provide me with some proof of that, great. Apparently, they used to be really big on that. Here, I'll pull a fish out of a hat. Here, I'll walk on water. Why aren't they still doing that? If this guy on TV wants my money, why doesn't he prove it? Walk on water. Show me that you're the chosen of God. Show me there is a God. Until then, you might want to say, maybe part of the test is figuring out how to survive as a species beyond the limitations of the earth. Why would a supernatural creature create one planet and then surround it with all of these resources in space? The asteroid belt alone has untold wealth that we could exploit and live off of. Why put that there if we weren't intended to reach out and take it? It's the very same thing as putting a tree 10 yards away from Adam and saying, have some nuts, have some oranges, survive. Okay? So if you're a supernatural person, ignoring the fact that the planet is running out of resources is spitting in the face of your supernatural God. Your God has put all of these planets and asteroids and resources out in space. I mean, colossal icebergs of ice floating in space that will provide the water necessary for life to survive. It's there for a reason, isn't it? Whether you think it's there for a reason or you don't, it's there. So if your God put it there, why are you sitting on your ass? Go out and get it. I don't know. But I'm doing something unbelievably stupid. I'm attempting to use logic to speak with persons who are completely illogical. You know, faith has nothing to do with facts. It has nothing to do with common sense. It has nothing to do with reason. Although reason has been perverted for centuries, famously by all sorts of people. Thank you, Jesuits, for rationalizing and rationalizing and rationalizing the existence of something that's just nonsense. Anyway, but if we humans are evolutionary creatures, and the next obvious step is to expand beyond the limits of the planet to begin to inhabit the rest of the universe, then we have to accept personal responsibility to become persons that are going to not only survive, but improve. Because the demands are just going to become greater and greater over time. I know that's counterintuitive. The luxurious bubble of a fragile world we live in says the opposite. It's become easier and easier to survive. But the survival that we enjoy on Earth today is so fragile it's ridiculous. And no one's willing to admit it because it's not politically palatable. It's not economically profitable to admit we are skyrocketing 1,000,000 miles an hour toward a cliff into a valley with no bottom. Okay? So, how do we go about achieving this goal? Well, for starters, we prioritize. We don't just stop consuming so much, we reduce the number of persons consuming. And we devote what resources we do have intelligently. We take a step back from our political and economic models and say, is this in the long-term best interest of the survival of humanity? Is it in the best interest of the survival of humanity for everyone in America to have 3 lawn chairs from Walmart in the garage that they never use? Or is it in the best interest of humanity to say, I'm going to tax you the amount of 3 lawn chairs from Walmart that you never use anyway, and I'm going to use that money to go out into space and start building space stations, mining facilities, refining facilities, water harvesting factories, probes, colonies. I'm going to pour it into pure research so that human beings can be put into hibernation and sent on ships to go outside our solar system. to find places in at least our galaxy that are inhabitable. There are probably planets unexploited, the size of Earth or larger, with so many resources, it will be the Garden of Eden that some of these nonsense people believe in. So much room, so much clean water, so many minerals and metals, so much arable land, that just finding one will buy us billions and billions of years of time. The Earth has been around a long time. Just finding one new home. And no, we can't put everybody on a spaceship and send them to a new home. No, I'm not talking about that. That's stupid. That's not possible. It isn't likely to ever be possible. I'm talking about the race, the species. I am talking about if you think humans have anything worthwhile at all, and a good argument could be made that no, they don't. If you think it's worth it, then you can be just a self-centered, selfish prick and soak up as much as you can get in your lifetime. I'm doing it. You know, I'm not making this argument because I love young people. As far as I can see, everyone, but especially young people, are complete pieces of shit. And they deserve to starve and die from famine, plague, disease, poverty. They deserve what they're getting. Not because they're selfish. I don't think selfishness is inherently a bad thing. It's a survival trait after all. But there's two kinds of selfishness. Rational, to preserve yourself, survival, and then irrational, which leads to doing things that harm other people just because you don't give a shit. And I'm just as guilty as anyone else. I'm soaking up these resources and I'm contributing nothing at all, except what I'm doing here now. I'm talking to you, Mr. 22-year-old. It's your future I'm talking about. I haven't got one. I haven't got one. And I know it. I never did have one. I thought when I saw Neil Armstrong walk on the moon, yeah, I'm that old, that I'm headed for outer space. Fuck this place. And all through the 70s, all this stuff in the Weekly Reader about pollution. I thought we were all going to be dead from pollution. And then all through the 1980s. Oh, we're all going to be dead from nuclear war. Well, here we are. Things suck. We dodged a bunch of bullets. But we can't keep doing that forever. It's inevitable that it's going to catch up with us. And what do you want out of life? You can just jerk yourself off like I'm doing. Or, if unlike me, you have talent, if you have ability, if you have brains that reach beyond the small scope of jerking yourself off, of creating something that will last after you're dead. Not a fucking cell phone app or a meme on Instagram. How about a breakthrough in physics like solve cold fusion, you lazy hipster douchebag fuckwit? If you can't do that, please kill yourself. You're eating food and drinking water and breathing air that belongs to Albert Einstein of this era or Tesla of this era. 99.99% of the people that are looking at this should kill themselves as a favor to the future, including me. I don't deserve to live. If there were a breeding program, I sure as fuck would be one of the very first eliminated. Doesn't matter. Remember, you probably don't because you're only 9 years old, you hipster douche. You don't remember the fairy tale, The Emperor's New Clothes. Yeah, so some douchebag emperor is so arrogant that con men come along with a plan. They say, this guy is so pompous and so insecure, we can con him. And they come to the palace and they say, we are the most magnificent tailors on earth, and we wish to make a suit of clothes for the emperor at no cost to him out of the finest possible fabric. Well, this finest possible fabric is so special that only the wisest and best people are capable of seeing it. To the peasantry, this fabric is invisible. It's pretty convenient. They pretend to drape it over the emperor. They pretend to stitch it up. And the emperor pretends to see it. Because if he admits there's nothing there, that means he's a peasant. And all his counselors say, oh, sire, it's the best fabric possible. Because if they admit they can't see it, they admit that they're low class. And all the town watches the king come out stark naked and show off in a parade his new clothes. Except for one little boy, a peasant boy. And he points at the emperor and he laughs and he says, the emperor is naked. Because he has nothing to lose. He doesn't care what anyone thinks of him. He's just a little kid. And everyone yells at him and says, oh, shut up, you're just a peasant boy. Well, I'm the peasant boy. It doesn't matter how stupid I am. It doesn't matter what you think of me personally. It's not important. The only important thing is the truth. The source of the truth does not matter. Okay? Truth is objective, not subjective. And it is a fact, resources are finite, but population growth is exponential and entirely unrestricted by any rational means on Earth at this time. Economics holds it back. Population is dwindling in Japan because they're so broke. Okay? And we can let horrible things like poverty and disease govern population. We've been doing that forever. Or we can be kind. Put the crippled baby to sleep when it's born. Breed out the bad traits, all of them. Mental illness, criminal tendencies, bad teeth, bad eyes, bad hearing. We can all be physically fit, genius level people. Why do you think they spend thousands of dollars paying these douchebag genius frat boys to donate to sperm banks? I'm only talking about making that institutionalized. I'm talking about rewarding people for having good children and preventing people from having bad children. And we can do that. It's just been done haphazardly up to this point. And there should be a control group. If we get this wrong, there should be a little colony off somewhere else that if we fuck this up worldwide, the colony will still be there. The little pocket of people that need glasses and need hearing aids, but retain something we forgot about. That's okay. And we need to get the fuck off the planet. Every culture on Earth that has ever become isolated has suffered for it. China, Japan, both had long periods of isolation, and to their great detriment. They thought, we're as good as it gets. We don't need any outside input. Didn't work out. Not in the long run. And that's enough for this one. It's already been much too long. I apologize for being so verbose. That's it. Over and out.